Welcome to the HAYVN Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders, owners, and professionals are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Hear from industry experts on everything from marketing, leadership, financing, and more. Brought to you by HAYVN, a co-working space where you can connect, create, and get stuff done.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the HAYVN Hubcast. I'm your host, Nancy Sheed, and I am excited to be welcoming back Jenn Grace. Welcome, Jenn.
Thank you, Nancy. Always excited to talk to you.
For those of you who aren't familiar with Jenn, she is the founder of Publish Your Purpose, which is a certified B Corp hybrid publisher. She is also the creator of the Institute for Author Growth and Impact. She's an author of no less than 8 books. And her most recent one is called Promote Your Purpose. And in this newest book, Jenn, you walk authors through your marketing framework for marketing books. But as we've talked about, that framework can be used basically for marketing anything, your business, your model, your message, your product, or whatever. Can you talk about what was the catalyst for creating this framework? Obviously, it works for authors, but you and I have talked about how there's some just common challenges in marketing for a lot of people who are starting out or who aren't familiar with marketing or think they know what marketing is, but they seem to be missing a lot of big picture situations.
Yeah. So the origin of this is that I have been working with authors for a decade now. I've been in marketing for 22 years, which is kind of gross when I now look at that number, but here we are. And I have had this big spreadsheet for years that we share with our authors that are all of these like little things, big things combined of just all of the stuff that from a marketing standpoint that you may want to consider at some point. Doesn't mean you need to, but at least put it into consideration. And one day I was like, I'm sharing a spreadsheet that has like 75 tabs in it. It's very well organized.
I was about to say, I have seen that spreadsheet. And I've also seen authors hear the word spreadsheet and they go, ah! They completely freak out. So I want to give a pause to what that beautiful spreadsheet looks like as a former accountant. But I mean, it was a piece of work. It is a piece of work.
And it's overwhelming. And so I was like, okay, I got to find a way to frame this out differently that at least makes sense and shows some kind of logical progression. Because I think at least if we know where we're starting, we can know where we want to go. But if we're just throwing a bunch of tactics and ideas, it's a little bit, I don't want to say meaningless, but it's hard to make meaning out of it. And so being a skier, an outdoor enthusiast and all the things, I decided, I'm like, well, if I'm going to put this together, I want to put it in an acronym that I want to hear. So I came up with the Aspen Method as a result of liking to be outside on the mountains.
Love it. So Aspen, A-S-P-E-N, just spelling it out for those who didn't catch it for our audio processors. And Jenn, before we sort of go through what your framework is, the point of being overwhelming is one component of kind of marketing challenges. Let's talk about some others, right? And that's also going to tease out how your framework came to be. But for example, we just talked about this last week when you were the host at the guest speaker at the Marketing Collective, where some people dive in the middle. Some people dive in with tactics, right? Like some people haven't taken the how does this all fit in thing. What are some other common things you hear when people are starting to talk to you about marketing, be it their book or their entity, thing, message, personal brand?
I think a lot of it is not knowing where to start because they don't have clarity. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times just as busy professionals, we kind of want to bypass the clarifying steps. We kind of want to just jump into the tactic because we feel like the tactic is going to yield the result. But if we don't have a foundation in place and we don't really know what our goal is or what our vision is or what the alignment looks like, then all of those tactics kind of fall flat. And I think that's where the overwhelm sets in because it's like, wow, there's so many different things I could be doing. But if we don't have a North Star that's driving us to the decision point to say, should I be doing this or should I be doing that? I think that's where overwhelm, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, like every negative thing that can kind of nip at you to kind of cause you to pause and be like, should I be doing this or not? It kind of creeps in when we lack all that clarity and foundation.
I love that piece because, again, the overwhelm might be crazy, but the clarity in terms of thinking about everything. I want to throw in another thing that we didn't actually talk about on Friday, but that I do find in talking to writers and authors, but even anybody who's launching a product is thinking about marketing in a more holistic way, right? Like not just thinking about it as a couple of different channels or where you run ads or social media, right? Like I think, again, in that bigger picture and clarity, getting people to think about marketing in a different way is also really, really important versus I think the way we've been programmed to believe what marketing is.
Yeah. And I think marketing has changed so much over time. Like you and I have been in relation and community with each other for like 10 years at this point.
Right.
And even just seeing how marketing has changed and the conversations that we've had have changed over the years. And I think that there's a lot of gurus and experts out there that get paid a lot of money to sell us things that we may or may not need. And I think that we all kind of end up in this trap, or not all of us, but a lot of people end up in this trap of thinking, if I'm going to be marketing my book, I have to be an influencer, or I have to have a large following on this platform, or I have to, or I should. And the reality is like, maybe yes, maybe no. Like it really comes down to like, what is aligned for you? What brings you joy? What, like if I'm telling you have to do something, you're like, absolutely not. That's not going to be successful no matter how much money you throw at it.
Right. You do not need to be on TikTok if you hate short video, or we might find another way to get you there. I'm thinking, Jen, of a client you and I worked on a long time ago. We weren't even allowed to use the word marketing to talk to them. Do you remember? They were like, if you call it marketing, we can't do it. And I was like, okay, we'll do it a different way.
I had them in the back of my mind when I was coming up with the title for Promote Your Purpose, because I was like, at least if I call it Promote Your Purpose, maybe more people might be more inclined to do something versus Market Your Purpose. Because the word marketing is cringy for people. The word sales is cringy for people. And it's like, at the end of the day, we're trying to show up and be of service to somebody else. Like that is really what we're trying to do.
100%. So let's launch into your Aspen Method. And literally, I'm going to just sort of let you go with it. And we'll start with A. And if I've got questions or interject, I will. But let's kickstart it with, what does the A stand for?
All right. So the A in Aspen is assess. So this is where we slow down and we take a look around and we just look at what do we have available to us, what might be missing, what might be working right now, what might not be working. It's almost like you could even put it as an audit, like assess or an audit. And the pre-work that really kind of needs to be done before even getting into the Aspen methodology itself is the foundation work. So my book, Promote Your Purpose, the first 7 chapters are the foundation work. Then chapters 8 through 12 are actually breaking down the Aspen side. And in that foundation work, it's knowing what your purpose is, knowing what your goals are, knowing who you're trying to reach, and knowing what your ecosystem looks like, and really knowing how to kind of reframe sales as a service rather than kind of showing up in a way that feels icky for you. So we kind of just need to get that foundation set first, because that will help us determine what we are assessing and how we're measuring success on the things that we are assessing, if that makes sense.
Right. And while it sounds very basic, answering some of those questions about the foundation, you and I know, whether you're working with, actually even particularly working with an author sometimes, teasing out some of those basic things like audience. What's the real message? Are we really looking at your ecosystem? Are your goals really to be at a bestseller list, or your goals to sell a number of books? Like, I don't want to your point, the fact that the first whole chunk of your book is dedicated to that. Some people are crystal clear. Some people think they're crystal clear, but that is no small nod to tackle some of those basic, fundamental, foundational purpose, as you said. Is there a particular hang up you see people get stuck in, or a way to help people get unstuck when they're working on the foundation work?
I think I see people get stuck in all the parts, but I think the who is where people really get stuck, because I think a lot of times from a marketing standpoint, and I remember taking a college class in marketing, and they focused on like people, product, place, promotion, like the 4 Ps, right? Well, anyone who's been in marketing, like we know that. And it was just talking about demographic data. Like demographic data in most cases is kind of useless. Like we really need to know what makes people tick. Like what's their behavior patterns? What's the psychology? Yes, knowing that you're targeting some middle-aged suburban white woman in her 40s, sure, that's helpful because it does narrow things down. But the psychology from state to state, country to country, interest, religious beliefs, diversity, everything is so different. And so I think that's where people really get stuck, because I say, who are you writing for? who's your ideal client? And it's always just this very kind of like one single sentence. And it's really just kind of describing the demographics of a person. And it really does not tap into any other detail of how they might be coming across your information, consuming it, purchasing it, etc.
I love that. And then there's some people who know crystal clear the one person they're writing for, and they don't even know the words demographics or psychographics or anything, right?
Yep.
So in the assess or audit phase, Jenn, can you give us some examples of things that you are assessing and auditing when you're starting to sort of work your way through the framework?
Yeah, I think a good one would be thinking about content, right? So taking a minute to just kind of see what type of content have you been putting out for either your book, for your business, for your brand, whatever the case is, because again, this applies to everybody, not just authors. Really just kind of taking a look at saying, okay, why don't I go into that really scary thing called Google Analytics and see, do I have traffic coming to my website? Am I posting blogs? Are those pages actually being seen? Or if I have a Substack, looking at the data from Substack to see, okay, when I post about this topic, I'm seeing there's a big increase. Or if I'm posting about this topic, it seems to be kind of not really resonating with people. Or looking at LinkedIn connections, if you're active on LinkedIn and seeing like, okay, I sent out 10 connections with people and I got 7 people who responded or only 1 person responded. As the assessing of all of those different things paints a bigger picture for us to know, to follow what direction we might want to be headed in. Or like you realize like, wow, I'm putting a lot of time, energy, I'm paying somebody to write blog content and there's no traffic to it, like no one's seeing it. You can say, does it make sense for me to continue to put this energy and resource here? Or is there something else I could be doing that maybe I can do it myself and I would feel better about it and it would get me more results? Because I think the biggest thing with marketing is a lot of people don't track. Like we just kind of throw things out and then we never track to see like, did that actually work or not?
It's all anecdotal or some very biased intake.
Yeah.
Take us through to S. Where are we going with the S in Aspen?
So now we're strategizing. So I think a lot of times people will start at the strategy, but they miss all the things that we just talked about from the assessment standpoint. So the strategy is really looking from that 30,000 foot view and seeing, okay, now that I know what my goals are, I know what my mission is, I know what my purpose is, I know who I'm trying to reach, what strategies are going to help me get there? We're not talking tactics yet, we're talking strategies. And so a strategy could be that you are creating a book to be part of a bigger ecosystem that you were building. A strategy could be that you are starting, you really want to become an influencer and you are starting a TikTok account, and then that is the approach that you're going to go. A strategy could be that you hate being on video, audio, any of it, and you really want to kind of go in, be more introverted and focus on writing and writing alone. That's a strategy, right? So it's a matter of kind of identifying where's the lane that we want to be playing in. Because as you're marketing a business, we are marketed to all day long, nonstop, about everything. Everyone's like, oh, you should have this, you should have this. What about doing this? What about doing that? And if you don't have the assessed piece or a strategy in place, it's really easy to just kind of be like, oh, Nancy said I should do this, and not even like think of like, does this follow a strategy that I've already set? And then you go off and you waste time, money, and energy. And you're like, oh, I probably, maybe if I had just a strategy in place, I could have been like, does this fit? Because if it fits, then you can do it. And if it doesn't fit, it's an easier no. Because sometimes we just have difficulty saying no to people. And if we can say, hey, it just doesn't fit the budget this year, doesn't fit the strategy this year, it's a much easier conversation to have with somebody.
And I would say on top of that, you will have, having assessed, you're also going to see what resources do you already have in place? What do you have in place to help you create that strategy, right? Like, oh, I already have X number of subscribers, or I already have this many followers, or I always have this big of a network. Do you know what I mean? That starts making what's a priority also, I think, naturally evolve. You know what I mean? And not make the decisions seem as hard as they might be if somebody just walks up and says, I need a book launch strategy, or I need a strategy for this campaign.
Yeah, because even like a book launch strategy, there's so many different ways you can launch a book, so many different ways. But if you don't have the clarity of what you're trying to accomplish, like I could say, go rent out a theater for $25,000 and charge tickets for your book launch. Or I could say, go have a book launch in your friend's yard. Either work depending on your strategy.
Exactly. And what is the P in Aspen bringing us to?
Now we're planning. So now we have the assessing, we have a strategy in place. Now we slow down and we just look to see, what do I need to do from a planning standpoint to make all of this a reality? So that's looking at our time, our resources, our team, what budget we might have available, what time we personally can commit to things. So from a planning standpoint, if you're kind of coming up with a strategy that's very time or resource heavy, it might also be heavy on you too. And so you need to kind of look from a planning standpoint to say, all right, I'm deciding to do this thing, but I'm realizing that to do this, I now need to dedicate 5 hours a week to this particular thing. At that point, you can still be assessing to say, all right, do I actually have that time to give? Do I want to provide that time? And then kind of come up with the plan accordingly. And again, it helps kind of decipher what does or does not make sense to do, because now you have a proper plan in place.
And again, I'm thinking of your 72 tab worksheet, which was so amazing, or still so amazing. But a couple things, and we did talk about this on Friday, and it's not a scare, it's not a warning. It's if you knew this before you got into this, it might be helpful. And that's kind of two things. One, Jenn, it's never too early to start thinking about marketing or promoting your purpose if we want to take it to the broader, right? Like, you don't have to have the perfect product. The book doesn't need to be done, because I know what you found and we found is authors will finish their book and say, now I'm ready to market. And there were many things that could have been done in advance, as well as you've just rightly said, they didn't realize that the marketing of the book is going to be potentially a full-time job if they let it, right? So we don't like to scare people, but it's never too soon, even if you're just working on the foundation and the assessment. Do you know what I mean? Or what are the baby steps you could be doing before a full out launch of a campaign or launch of a book, right?
Yeah. And one of the things that I said in the workshop on Friday was that when we think about the marketing side of things, and this again applies beyond authors, is bring people along for the ride, bring people along for the journey on whatever the thing is that you're building or creating. So you might be starting a new business. Bring people along for the journey to say, I'm starting a business on doing XYZ, and I just met somebody that can do the prototype for it.
Right.
I don't know I've never done a prototype, but that would be really freaking cool if somebody I knew was like, yeah, I just met with a designer who's going to help me with a prototype, to be able to say, that's amazing. And then I can volunteer to like put my hand up to be like, hey, Nancy, when you have that prototype, I would love to see what it looks like. I want to know more about this journey with you. Because by the time, whatever the thing is that you're building or creating, which in book world, it can be short, but it can also be years and years in the making. And so by the time it does come out, all these little people you've kind of picked up along the way who are like in the background and be like, yeah, go Nancy, I can't wait for this to come out. They're just kind of like waiting there. And that's not even really, it doesn't feel like marketing, because you're just extending the invitation to be part of the ride with you.
Right. Which is why I love that part of like, what if we just called it engaging a community around your idea, message, product, or whatever. I do love that piece and making people, again, the behind the scenes. And even for introverts, that feels weird and it feels hard. But genuinely, I think it's just so much easier to be laying the foundation. And we've seen things like cover reveal. I mean, I keep going back to authors, and you're being very gracious to go beyond, whether it's a cover reveal or it's a title, or there's many ways to engage without giving away your secret sauce, which is, I think, an old school way of people thinking about stuff. And it's not the way people operate in terms of building sort of momentum around their product or their purpose, right?
Yeah.
What's the E, Jenn?
Execute. Yay. We're finally there. The place that people like to start and skip all the other steps before it. So yeah, execute is exactly what it sounds like. Now you know the lay of the land. You have a strategy in place. You have a plan for how you're going to execute that strategy. And now you can actually do the execution. So all of the things that somebody inevitably says to you, especially as a new author, of you need to be doing Facebook ads, you need to be doing BookFunnel, you need to be being on Book Talk, all the things that may or may not make sense in your strategy. Now you can at least look at them and evaluate, okay, does this make sense or not? And you can start to kind of move forward. So you can kind of plan what your budget's going to be for the specific strategies. But the execute piece, it's all the tactics. It's the actual, like the doing part. So a lot of this is like logical and like thinking and whatnot. Now we're in strategy and execute, or like where things are actually getting done.
Right. And Jenn, it was something you did also say on Friday was when you're thinking about this Aspen, and we haven't got to end yet, but for some people, this is a short cycle. For some people, this is over the course of a year. You don't break your framework until you spend X many weeks on this, many weeks on this, many weeks on this. It really is a cycle depending on what's going on, which I thought was hugely valuable for people who get all caught up in like, how long does this take? What does it mean? How many months? How many weeks, etc. Right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people want that because they want the parameters. They want the guardrails, the boundaries, whatever the case may be. And like a lot of times, like if someone asks me for that, I say like, do it in 90 days. You can get a lot accomplished in a 90-day window of time. You get enough data to be able to have actionable course corrections that you can make, but it's not long enough that you're wasting like too much time and energy on. So like if you need to put something on it, put 90 days. But beyond that, like you could assess things in a couple of days, or you might have a really big infrastructure and elaborate, and it takes team and people and resources to kind of figure out like where you're starting. And then the execution, it might be that you just want to do like one book launch event, or maybe you want to do one lunch and learn. And like now you want to like kind of go back and say like, okay, was that worth it or not? So it's like, it can be as long or short as you want it to be. And there's really no rules on purpose.
And winding us out with N of Aspen.
Now we are nurturing people. So we are nurturing. I think this is honestly the most important part of all of it, is that we have put a lot of time, money, energy, and resources into setting all of these things up. Sometimes we were spending tens of thousands of dollars and getting strategy guidance and consultation and plans and all the things, and then the money that it takes to actually execute the things. And then what do? And then it's like, oh, hey, we brought the people to the water, but actually it's dry. There's nothing here. There's
Ta-da!
nothing. Right. Well, hey, you're at the trough, but there's no water. So the nurturing is like really being on top of that community that you're building, the email list that you're building, the following that you're building on whatever platform that might look like, and really being intentional about keeping them around, giving them more information, inviting them into other things, having them become champions for your work before you just are like, oh, hey, I just spent $10,000 in Facebook ads. I got 150 new people. And then you're like, oh, that's fine. I got them on my list. Like that's like you have to nurture that list. You have to nurture those relationships. Everything needs to be nurtured. And I think we just skip like the relationship building side of things, because I think we're in such a online marketing culture still, which I'm hoping the pendulum swings a little bit more on that, which is why I love that HAYVN does in-person things, right?
Right. You and me both. You say it's the most important. I also think it's the most overlooked. Again, we talk about the foundation and everything else, and sometimes people might touch upon those pieces, but I think the nurture part is, I'm so happy to hear you waving the flag for that part, because I think it's critical. And as you and I know, can also sometimes be the exponential growth that you need if it just gets the attention.
Yeah, we just have to put a little bit of energy toward it, because it's like, if you have an affiliate program, like that's where you would know who's going to be part of an affiliate program, is in your nurturing. If you have something beyond the book to sell, or if you have a product or service, like you're going to find out in that nurturing, but you can't just go straight to, hey, cold person, don't know you, somehow you found me, and now go buy my thing. Like it just doesn't really, like it
right.
can't
And you want
work.
them to,
it's not really.
An affiliate, an ambassador to speak about you or your product in rooms where you aren't, right? Like I just think it's, and that's that kind of extension I also think of a different way of thinking of marketing. And sometimes it's measurable, sometimes it's not, but critically important. Jenn, thank you so much. I love that you have broken this down. And as somebody who's worked with you and been in this marketing space, I love the simplicity you brought to it. I love the framework. I love that it kind of keeps us on task and gives kind of an operating or an ecosystem to do that. If people want to learn more, what's the best way to learn more about you, your book, the Aspen framework?
There's a lot of ways. I would say you can go to, I'm on Jenn T Grace on pretty much every platform, but my Substack right now is the place that I think a lot of people are finding value. It's Promote Your Purpose on Substack.
On Substack, great.
Yeah, and then promoteyourpurposebook.com.
Okay, and you might have a YouTube video where we can put a link in for...
I do. Yes, I will share that. It's a workshop that I just did live in April, and it kind of walks through how to break down this marketing and the Aspen Method into 15-minute increments daily to actually see results.
I love it. I feel like there's a challenge in there, Jenn. I feel like there's a challenge. Thank you again. We love that the HAYVN ecosystem is part of your system and vice versa. Thanks again for speaking Friday to our group. They loved it. And we'll put all of your details in the show notes. Thank you, Jenn.
Thank you, Nancy.
And that is another episode of the HAYVN Hubcast. If you like what you hear, please give us a review if you haven't already. Please subscribe or share this link, and make sure to connect with Jenn and all of her places and learn more about the Aspen Method.
Thanks for listening to the HAYVN Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders and owners are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. HAYVN is a co-working space and virtual community located in the heart of Fairfield County, Connecticut. HAYVN is a hub for business owners and professionals to connect, create, and get stuff done. Find out more about the HAYVN community online at hayvn.com. That's HAYVN.com. HAYVN Hubcast is produced by Sound Advice Strategies.